Hi, my name is Linda. Have you ever felt like your own family was ashamed of you? Like no matter how much you gave, they always made you feel small. I want to ask you something. Have you ever been left out of a family event for a reason that just didn't make sense? If you have, please let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know if it's just me, or if others have gone through it too. I've always been the quiet one. I'm in my 40s now, single, no kids, and I work hard. I live a peaceful life and I like it that way. I don't wear makeup every day, I prefer long skirts and simple blouses, and most of my clothes are handmade or passed down from my mother. I'm not into TikTok or Instagram trends, and I've never felt the need to post everything online. But my family sees that as a problem. They always called me too old-fashioned. My mom would laugh and say I looked like I walked out of a 70s movie. My dad didn't say much, but I could feel the judgment in his eyes. And my younger brother, Eric. Well, he was the star of the family. Always has been. He's younger than me by 7 years, but it always felt like I was the one lagging behind. Eric is flashy. Expensive suits, sports cars, and a phone always in his hand. He's got thousands of followers on social media and he's always dating someone new. His latest girlfriend is some kind of online influencer. I don't know what exactly she does, but she's always filming herself or posing for something. My parents adore her. They think she's modern and stylish. Everything they say I'm not. 2 months ago, our family started planning a big reunion. It was supposed to be at a lake house we used to go to when we were kids. I was excited not just to see everyone but because I offered to help organize the whole thing. I handled the booking, the menu, even the decoration ideas. I spent hours trying to make it perfect and I did it with love because even though I always felt like the odd one out, I still cared. 1 week before the event, I got a phone call from my mom. He sounded strange. Hesitant. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, listening carefully as she cleared her throat and said, "Honey, I think maybe you should sit this one out, just this year." I didn't understand. I asked her why. And then she said it. It's just, with Eric introducing his new girlfriend, we want things to feel more modern, you know? You have a lovely heart, but you don't really match the vibe we're going for this time. I didn't even know what to say. I held the phone to my ear in silence, hoping maybe she'd say it was a joke, or that she didn't mean it like that. But she didn't take it back. She just kept talking as if she were explaining the weather. "We just don't want any tension," she added, like my presence would be a storm. "Eric's girlfriend is, well, she's used to a certain kind of lifestyle. I don't want her to feel uncomfortable." That was the moment my heart sank. I wasn't just being left out, I was being told I was an embarrassment. My own mother, the woman I had cooked for, cared for, even helped when she had surgery last year, was telling me that I didn't fit the image of the family anymore. It wasn't always like this. When the reunion was first being planned, everyone was chatting excitedly in the family group chat. I was helping coordinate the location, looking up prices, sending links, offering ideas. I even suggested the color scheme for the decorations, blue and gold, the same as our childhood family crest. People responded with thumbs up emojis, and for a brief moment I felt like I was part of something. But slowly, I noticed my messages weren't being replied to anymore. Someone would post something and I'd follow up, but the conversation would move on without me. Then came the sudden change of tone from Eric. He'd been friendly at first, but once he mentioned his girlfriend coming, everything shifted. He started ignoring me completely. And then that call from my mom. She said it would just be easier this way. I cried that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I cried into my pillow like I hadn't done in years. I'm a grown woman, but nothing cuts deeper than being rejected by your own blood. The day of the reunion came and I stayed home. I baked myself a small lemon cake, the kind we used to eat at those family picnics, and I sat on the back porch alone. I kept telling myself it was just one event. Just one weekend. But deep down it wasn't about the event at all. It was about what it meant. That evening I made the mistake of opening Facebook. There they were. My whole family smiling together, standing in front of the lake house I had helped pick out. My mom was in the middle holding a wine glass. My dad was next to her wearing the sweater I got him last Christmas. Eric and his girlfriend were posing like celebrities, her arm looped through his, her lips pursed in that fake smile influencers always seem to have. I wasn't in a single photo. But what hit the hardest was the caption under the post. "The whole family together at last." I read that sentence 5 times. Then 10. I felt like the floor beneath me had vanished. I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. My mother, who had given birth to me, raised me, held me during fevers and fed me when I was too sick to move, was now announcing to the world that her family was whole without me. And people were commenting, "Beautiful family," and "So happy for you all." And my mom replied to each one with little hearts and smiley faces, like everything was perfect. Like I had never existed. I dropped my phone on the couch and just sat there staring at the wall. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I don't even know. All I remember is how quiet the house felt. How heavy my chest felt. Eventually, I walked to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "Why am I never enough for them? I've always been there for everyone." When Eric lost his job 2 years ago, I helped him with rent. When Mom needed help sorting her taxes, I stayed up late 3 nights in a row. I was the one who cleaned the house for Thanksgiving last year when everyone else was too busy taking selfies. But now, suddenly, my clothes, my silence, my way of living, it was all too much for them. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The sounds of the clock ticking were the only company I had. And somewhere in the middle of that silence, something inside me began to shift. Something deep, something slow. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was just tired. Tired of shrinking myself to fit into a family that didn't even want me around. But life has a strange way of turning things around when you least expect it. I wish I could say that was the moment I decided to change everything. But the truth is, I had already been changing, quietly in the background, far from their approval or applause. You see, while they were busy showing off on social media, I was building something. No filters, no hashtags. Just real work. Real effort. A few years back, after I got laid off from my corporate job, I had 2 choices. Sit around and wait for another opportunity or make one for myself. I chose the second. I started small. I had always loved fabrics, patterns, and handmade things. So I began designing simple clothing, comfortable, timeless, and beautiful. I used the savings I had, bought a second-hand sewing machine, and set up a small workspace in my garage. I didn't post anything online. I didn't even tell the family. I just worked. I used to go to bed with my hands sore and my back aching, but my heart felt full. For once, I was building something that was mine. No one told me what to wear. No one told me I wasn't good enough. I made every decision myself. And little by little, people started noticing my designs. Not the influencers, not the loud ones, but the real women. The ones who wanted something that felt like home. Something that didn't scream for attention but whispered confidence. Within a year, I had a loyal group of clients. I reinvested every dollar I earned. Bought better equipment. Hired 2 local women who needed jobs just as badly as I once did. We worked together like family, better than family actually. 2 years after I started, a small boutique downtown offered me shelf space. Then a larger store picked up my line. And before I knew it, I was registering my business officially and signing documents that labeled me as founder and CEO. Still feels strange to say that out loud. But even after all that, I never changed how I lived. I still wore the same handmade dresses. I still ate dinner alone in my quiet kitchen. I still read books instead of scrolling through Instagram. I never posted updates about my business. I never talked about profits or press mentions or partnerships. I never bragged. Because deep inside, I was still that girl who wanted her family's respect. Not for what she earned, but for who she was. And yet they never asked. Not once. No one in the family ever said, "How's work?" or "What are you building these days?" They talked about Eric's startup ideas, his flashy new job titles, his girlfriend's podcast and travel vlogs. But me? I was invisible. Sometimes I wondered what would happen if I told them the truth. That I had 30 employees now. That my designs were featured in a national magazine last year. That I had quietly bought the building where our office is housed. But I never said a word. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew it wouldn't matter to them. Not until it benefited them. Still, I found peace in my solitude. The quiet mornings with tea and soft jazz. The pride I felt seeing a stranger wearing one of my designs downtown. The warmth of mentoring young girls who wanted to start their own businesses. That was my world. Simple. Fulfilling. Whole. And yet, on some nights, I still wished someone in my family would just knock on my door. Not because they needed a favor, not because they were embarrassed by me, but just to say, "We're proud of you." But they never came. Until one day they did. And they came not with love, but with desperation. It was a quiet Monday morning, the kind I usually liked. The office smelled like fresh coffee and my assistant came in with a new batch of resumes for the week's interviews. I was reviewing numbers from our last quarter when she knocked gently and said, "There's a candidate you'll want to see yourself. Eric Thompson." I paused. My hands froze on the keyboard. Eric Thompson. I took the folder from her hands even though I didn't need to. I knew that name like the back of my hand. It was my brother. The same brother who had laughed along when Mom called me outdated. The same one who had watched me get excluded from the family reunion and never said a word in my defense. Now here he was, applying for a job at my company. I sat there staring at his resume. He had worked at a mid-sized tech firm that had recently gone under. Laid off during a merger, it said. Excellent team player, motivated leader, strong communication skills. I had to bite back a bitter smile. The flashbacks hit me all at once. Mom's cruel message telling me not to show up. The photos they posted without me, their happy faces and captions like, "Our beautiful family together again." My hands trembled slightly as I closed the file. I took a deep breath and told my assistant, "Schedule the interview. I'll take it myself." The day of the interview arrived. I sat in our main conference room, calm, collected. I wore one of my soft beige dresses, handmade as always. No need for power suits or makeup. I didn't have to prove anything anymore. There was a knock at the door. "Eric Thompson," the receptionist said. I looked up, and there he was. He stepped in with a confident smile on his face, until he saw me. His steps slowed. His smile faded. His mouth opened slightly but no words came out. It was like he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Eric," I said, my voice steady. "Please have a seat." He blinked, then quickly tried to recover. Hi. He didn't expect." He chuckled nervously. "Wow, you look good. I didn't realize this company was yours." I leaned back in my chair and nodded. "Yes. I'm the CEO." He swallowed hard and sat down. He fidgeted with his resume, then placed it neatly in front of him like it might protect him. I watched him closely. The sharp, confident tone he always had at family dinners was gone. Now he looked tired. Smaller. Not so sure of himself. "So," I began, "tell me why you're interested in this position." He started talking, about how things had changed, about being laid off after the merger, about needing something more stable. He mentioned rent being high, the job market being tough. He smiled weakly and said, "I guess life's humbled me a little." I listened quietly, nodding here and there. Then I began asking questions, the real ones. Things that tested his skills. He fumbled. His answers were shallow, rehearsed. He hadn't done his research. He hadn't prepared for real challenge. Not like I had all those years ago in my garage with a sewing machine and a dream. He started to sweat. I could see the panic in his eyes. I asked him about teamwork, about conflict resolution, about his biggest professional failure. And each time his answers stumbled. He tried to smile through it, but it didn't reach his eyes. Finally, I closed the folder. "We'll be in touch," I said. He looked at me hopeful. Do you think I have a chance?" I stood up slowly. "We'll see, Eric." And then I walked out of the room, leaving him sitting there, alone, just like I had been after the reunion. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I'd seen the last of them, at least for a while. But just a week later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I peeked through the curtain and my heart sank. There they were. Both of them. My parents stood on my porch like they were just stopping by for a casual visit. My mother had a pie in her hands, cherry her favorite. My father was smiling awkwardly, his hands stuffed into his coat pockets like a nervous teenager. I didn't move at first. I just stood behind the curtain wondering if I should even open the door. But I did. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still hoped they'd changed. Maybe a small piece of that same little girl who always tried to earn their approval was still inside me, peeking out. "Sweetheart," my mother said brightly, walking in before I could even invite her. "You look wonderful. This place is lovely." My father followed, nodding. "Very impressive, really. We've been meaning to stop by." They moved through my living room like it belonged to them, complimenting the curtains, the furniture, even the smell of the fresh flowers on the table. They acted like nothing had ever happened. "We're so proud of you," my mom said, handing me the pie. "Look at you, our very own Sikh." I didn't smile. I set the pie down without looking at it. We sat at the dining table and I poured them tea out of politeness. My heart thudded in my chest, and every time they said something nice, I waited for the real reason they had come. Because I knew them. I knew their ways. And their sudden praise felt like perfume over a trash can. After a few sips and some small talk about how cold the weather had gotten, my mother finally leaned forward, placing her hand gently over mine. I just wanted to talk to you, woman to woman, she said softly. About your brother. I didn't move. I didn't speak. She continued. Eric is going through a very hard time right now. Things haven't been easy. You know how the economy is. And, well, he really needs this job. It would mean everything to him. Could you help him out? Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. Like sugar covering something rotten. I looked at her, really looked. And suddenly I wasn't in my dining room anymore. I was back on my sofa months earlier, crying alone after seeing those family photos without me. I was reading her caption again, the whole family together at last. I was hearing her voice on the phone telling me I didn't fit in, that I might embarrass them. I was remembering the cold silence when I said I'd already bought the decorations for the reunion and no one cared. I stood up slowly. My chair made a soft scraping sound against the floor. My mom looked up confused. Honey. I didn't answer. I walked to the door, opened it wide and pointed. You need to leave. They blinked. My father shifted uncomfortably. What? I picked up my phone. My fingers didn't shake this time. My voice didn't crack. If you don't leave now, I'll have to call security. My mother gasped. Security? Are you serious? I stared her right in the eyes as I dialed. 011. The sound of those 3 numbers hit harder than a slap. My father stood up quickly. Okay, we're leaving. No need for that. My mother stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Maybe they both had gotten so used to me being silent, small, and easy to push around that they couldn't handle seeing me like this. Just remember, she said as she walked out the door, he's still your brother. I didn't reply. I closed the door behind them and locked it. I stood there for a moment, phone still in my hand, my chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. And for the first time in a long time I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not sadness, not anger. Power. Not because I was rich. Not because I was the CEO. But because I had finally chosen myself. I stood there for a long time after they left. The house was quiet again, just like I liked it. But this time the silence felt different. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I walked over to the window, gently pulling the curtain aside. I watched them walk down the driveway, my mother's arms folded tight across her chest, my father mumbling something under his breath. They didn't look back once. And I didn't expect them to. I leaned against the window frame and closed my eyes. For years I would have given anything for their approval. Their praise. Their love. I used to believe that if I just tried a little harder, if I dressed differently, spoke less softly, acted more modern, they'd finally see me. They'd finally be proud. But now, they were the ones begging. They were the ones showing up, hoping to be let in. And I was the one holding the power to say yes or no. Funny how life turns like that. I took a deep breath and walked into my study. I opened a small wooden box I kept on my desk. Inside it were a few things I treasured, not expensive things but meaningful ones. A handkerchief embroidered by my grandmother. A pressed flower from my first garden. And an old letter. Yellowed edges, handwritten in soft strokes. It was from my grandmother. She had passed away years ago, but her words lived on in my heart. I unfolded the paper and read the sentence I had memorized long ago, yet still read whenever I needed strength. Real gold never screams to shine. She wrote that to me when I was 15, after a family gathering where I'd been ignored the whole night. I remember crying on her lap, telling her I felt invisible. And she looked me in the eyes and said, "Sweetheart, gold doesn't need attention. It just is. And one day they'll see." She had been right. I looked up from the letter and for a moment, I saw my reflection in the glass cabinet. No makeup. Hair in a loose bun. Simple sweater. No filters, no hashtags, no sparkly heels. Just me. And for the first time, I loved who I saw. I walked back into the living room and picked up my phone. Not to call anyone but to speak. To someone else who might be watching. Someone out there who feels like they're not enough. Someone who's been told they don't fit the picture. My voice was calm, steady. "Hi. My name's Angela. And for most of my life I was called boring. Old-fashioned. Too quiet. Too modest. Too different. I paused, breathing in. But I want you to know something. Just because you don't fit in with the noise doesn't mean you don't belong. Some of us were never meant to follow the crowd. Some of us were made to stand apart. And that's not a weakness. That's strength. I let that sit there for a second. Have you ever been left out of something important? A family dinner? A reunion? A wedding? I asked, looking into the lens as if I was speaking to just one person. Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. Where are you watching from? I smiled softly. You're not alone. I promise. I walked over to the fireplace and sat on the arm of the chair, still holding the letter from Grandma. You know, revenge, it's a word we throw around. And trust me, I've imagined it. Them crying. Them regretting everything. But what I've learned is, I didn't need revenge. Their regret was the revenge. I looked down for a second. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to prove myself to anyone. I just had to keep going. Quietly. Steadily. Honestly. There was a long pause. Just the soft ticking of the clock in the background. And then I looked back up. I wasn't too boring, I said, my voice stronger now. I was just too real for their fake world. I reached forward and turned off the camera. And that was enough.